Oh, first of all, we have a disclaimer which says that all the information in this session is supplementary on the call text and the program text. So these texts are leading. So any inconsistencies between what's said here and the call text is leading. And if there are any questions about it, please contact me. There's one exception, because in the call text it says that the projects that are, it's about the studies to prevent occurrence or acquisition and transmission of AMR, but we also would like to see some projects on more knowledge on acquisition and transmission. These are also eligible for the call. So this is an extra. There are some program themes, and they're mentioned in the application form, and the order in the application form is slightly different from the one in the call text, but I will not read this out loud. You can find this afterwards in the information on the website. We will deliver these slides, and we'll have these the film as well. But it's actually that the appropriate diagnostics from the program text is the research area 2 in the call text. That's a technical thing, why it's in a different order, but we couldn't help it. So I'm sorry for that. But it's quite clear. If there are any questions, of course, on that, please contact us. It's a big slide, but you'll understand when you read it. Okay. So we have this call on the reuse of data. And why? Well, that's because we think, and we know because we talk to a lot of people, that there's a lot of knowledge hidden in previously gathered information and databases. So there's plenty of times that I heard people say, like, okay, we wanted to do this as well, but there was no time, there was no money, and it would have been so helpful. So this is why we thought, okay, let's do that. Let's really focus on reuse of data. We also want to optimize public funding by that, because we get some return on investment. This research is already being done. There's a lot of information there, so let's use it. So we also want to establish that the reuse of data is a fundamental principle, because we all talk about reuse and fairness, but what does it really mean? So we thought, instead of just asking for that, we'll just make it mandatory. And we also want to enhance the fairness of the data that's going to be used, and of course of your results. We also wanted to establish the standardization of language as a fundamental or a foundation principle. So this is the reason why we focused on the reuse of data. But foremost, this is not, of course it's important and it's mandatory, but the research ideas, the project ideas that we expect, we really want them to aim to have a considerable impact on lowering the burden of antimicrobial or antibacterial resistance. That is the main focus, of course, of the call as far as content goes. So what kind of data are we talking about? This scheme or figure is also in the call text. You can read it. So we're talking about these kind of data. It's pretty big, actually. So it's a biobanks, collections, databases, biobank services, like collections of biological material, biospecimens, blood, urine, bacteria, molecular derivatives, but not other microorganisms. We're just focusing on bacteria. Of course, the data associated with these collections, they can also be reused. And we have some non-sample data as well, of course, like medical records, survey data, psychological or biomedical, biochemical data. So these are all kinds of data that you could reuse to get more answers on questions that are still out there. So the research eligible for funding. So we wanted to focus some on implementation projects, although we know that huge implementation projects, of course, take much more than the 3 years that we give right now. but I'm sure that implementation actions can be organized by you. We also wanted to focus on gap analysis on implementation failure. So if there have been actions to implement something and it just didn't work, why? What happened there? So, and what can we learn from that to lower the burden of antimicrobial resistance? We also think that desktop analysis could be one of the projects. Laboratory analysis, like some extra lab work, or I don't know, genome sequencing. You're more familiar with all these the possibilities. We also think that meta-analysis, systematic reviews, or data integration, linkage of studies, this could all provide a lot of information that we still need, and well, which is not funded in any other way usually. So, and of course you can have a combination of all the above. So within this call, it will be mandatory that you improve the level of the fairness of your original data, the database you're going to use as the basis of your study. And Rob will talk more about that, but it is mandatory as far as possible. We also want you to map the data into international standards appropriate for your research community and for the database you're working with. It might be, I understand this is quite new, but the people from NICTIS will also be helpful in that area to help you further, and RIVM as well. And they will also have a presentation on that and how it works. And there is a biobanking data dictionary for bacteria, and it's quite new. I guess maybe not everybody knows about it. There are all links in the call text to this dictionary, and we really would like you to apply this data dictionary for biological samples, at least the mandatory one, the short list on that. Everything to enhance reuse and enhance the fairness of the original database. It will be part of your it has to be part of your project idea. So if you're invited to file a full application, we also would like to have a data management plan with the full proposal. So you can already think about it when you are writing your pre-proposal, that we really want you to have like to make a data management plan. There will be more on that on the full proposal stage, in that stage, but I think it's wise to already think about it, that you really need to do that before you get funded. So it's not in the other calls. It was like if you are granted, if the project is granted, then we ask for a data management plan. But now we ask you upfront already, because of those three mandatory items, to already elaborate on that if you are going to file for a full proposal, which will be somewhere next year. So, but I already want to mention it right now. So if your project is granted, which will be way back further in the next year, we also want you to have a signed consortium agreement or sponsorship agreement. So I also urge you, if you are going to work with other parties, that you already think about that right now. So how are we going to arrange that? Because it will be mandatory, and otherwise the funding, we need to approve your or accept your consortium agreement in the end. And for granted projects, we will also start with a bring your own data workshop, because we also realize that maybe you need some help with that data management plan and what are you really going to do with it. So we will organize a bring your own data workshop. That will be somewhere in October 2020. The exact dates will be made clear as soon as we know, and might be even that we have more than one workshop. but it is a mandatory workshop, so I think you should really, well, anticipate on that, and we can also help you then. And how are you going to make your data, the principal data, how are you going to make those data more fair, or how are you going to use like the standards? So, okay, eligible partners or parties. Of course, registered in the Netherlands. This is a national call. We really want you to address the issues or research in a non-commercial basis. This is the research that we want to fund. So it's research institute, hospitals, care centers, veterinary practices, environmental organizations, etc. We also, we really want you to elaborate on why is this partnership, so what's the added value of this partnership. And as said before, we really want, in the end, we want a consortium or a sponsorship agreement. So the projects, they can last for 3 years max. We have 250,000 euro for the max. We know it's not huge, but I think it's manageable. But smaller projects are also invited, because we think that if you do a desktop research, it shouldn't have to last for 3 years and 250,000. And it can also provide very crucial information on the task that we have is lessening the burden of antibiotic resistance. So, and then we have a new thing, the state aid regulations, the EU state aid regulations. I don't know whether you have heard about it before, but in the Netherlands we are under the vergrootglas. What's it? The magnifying glass. On state aid regulations. So the ministry, which is the funder of ZonMw, of course, and who provides the money for this program, urges ZonMw to really check on state aid, and which means that we are not supposed to provide, you know, funding for commercial activities. The way our system is organized in the Netherlands, a hospital is a commercial entity, which makes it really hard. So we have been trying to find out how can we provide this subsidy, and it means that we will consider the activities of public interest, which they are, I think. We will entrust the entity or the organization that will conduct the research. We will entrust them with the delivery of these public services, and that's called a service of general and economic interest, or in Dutch, een dienst van algemeen economisch belang. There's more on that in the call text. It shouldn't have to mean a lot for you especially, but it means a little bit. We need more information on what is being done by which party for which money. So there is also this this budget format, which is a bit more elaborate than the one that you're used to work with from ZonMw. So, what is the procedure on this whole call? We have this information session right now. We have the deadline, that's 10 September in 2019. We have the committee's recommendations early December. Then we have the deadline for submission of the full grant application, that's 11 February. It's all also in the call text is. The reviewers' comments will be received 16 March. You will have your deadline for the rebuttal on 30 March 2020. And then we'll have, end June, you will get these letters, which also will be in a little different order than you're used to, because we first have to give you the intention, then we'll give you the DAEB letter, and then we'll give you the decision letter. Doesn't mean that much, but you need to know that it will work like this. And the deadline for the start of the projects will be somewhere in October, we think, and then we'll also have this workshop, your bring your own data workshop. So after this full proposal stage, you'll first get this intention letter, then you will get the designation letter for the DAEB, then you will have to send in your consortium agreement or sponsorship agreement, and then you'll get your decision letter. Those two can also be different. I need to check with our legal officers how precisely we need to do that, but that will become clear once we head there at that time. Well, again, start of the project in October 2020 and the workshop in October 2020. So I would really like you to pay attention if you're going to file for a project idea, that we have this distinct budget form for this call, which is in the attachment. It's in the call text. It's a different form than the normal budget form from ZonMw. It's more elaborate, and you need to use that one. We have some extra questions. It's also on the existing data. It's the start already, I think, of your data management plan, because it gives us some information on what kind of data are you going to work with. So you need to answer these questions as well, and it's also an extra attachment. We urge you to involve your data management expert very early in the process, because you need to know what it means. If you're going to make these data extra fair, if you're going to use a standard, or you're going to use SNOMED or this biobanking data dictionary, you need to know what it means. So please involve your data management expert as soon as possible. Also involve your implementation experts in your as soon as possible, because we really want you to implement what you provide, the results. Chris will tell you later more about that. Please read the criteria. It's always a tip. I get some calls from people saying, would this work, would this work? And I always say, read the criteria. Give answers to the questions that are stated in the criteria in the call text. So make it easy also for the you don't need to convince me, you need to convince the Commission. So also, big question, please provide us reviewer suggestions. It's always a big task to get the right reviewers. We ask for 3, I think. But if you know 5 people, we're also happy if you can provide these names for us. I also urge you to work already a little, or think at least about the consortium agreement. There is a model on the website, ZonMw website. You can use that. Especially in this call, it's also about, you know, your foreground IP and your background IP. So who owns this data? What are we going to use? Are we able to use this data, and are we going to provide, you know, who's owner of the results of the research, and how are you going to spread that? So, and how is the work between the different parties within the consortium, how is it divided? What are the agreements? So work on that, take that along with your project idea already. And remember, the deadline is 10 September. Questions? So the question is, if I have a foreign party, how can I involve that? Can I involve them in my consortium? Yes. Yeah. Well, we, the answer is, well, you can, as long as it's not a huge proportion of the whole.
Only for 10, maybe 15% or so.
Yeah, that's, and we don't have a hard line in that, but it will be, you know, looked upon and say, okay, why is this so important? And you really need to elaborate on why is this partner so important for this project. Yeah. Can we do it without? If you can't, then it's quite important. But if the Commission would know, people from the Commission would say, yeah, but we have partners like that in the Netherlands, so why would we? So make sure that you really make clear why it is so important, that, and why in the end result is so important that you're going to provide.
That's clear.
Yeah?
Consortium agreements and sponsorship agreements suggest that companies may be involved in this call. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you have examples of companies that can be involved?
I think of small SMEs, like biotech companies could be involved, I think. But then you really need to be sure and clear that you make it very clear why this company is involved, what the benefits are, and how it is organized. Who's going to make money? Because that's, of course, the most important and crucial question for us. Who's going to make money? Who's going to get the IP from the results? So these questions are about participation of companies. Yes, it is quite new. This is also, if you really look at it very thoroughly, then we should consider, for instance, hospitals, like peripheral hospitals, already as companies in the Netherlands, because they're private entities, according to the law. So since we have to do this state aid regulation check, we now say that this research, so we want research results. And we think that, for instance, SMEs can also have very interesting research results, and which could be combined. So, but again, it needs to be very clear in this consortium agreement how it is organized, where the money goes, who benefits from this money in the end. So, yeah. I mentioned state aid. We have to check on state aid because that's forbidden under the EU regulations. But because we do it now under a DAEB, or I don't know the English word again, but the Dienst van Algemeen Economisch Belang, we can broaden a little bit. So yes, institutes are also eligible in this call. But make the data fair and reusable and interoperable and available and findable. So the question is, if everybody would say we don't want the IP, then there wouldn't be a problem with the state aid. That's your question. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that, because it's an EU regulation and they just really check, like, okay, where is the money, the public money, going? So this is so we do have to do that check, and we are doing it now. We decided to make this call a DAEB, een Dienst van Algemeen Economisch Belang. Any other questions?
You mentioned you need to work with your dataset, but can you also work with already published datasets?
Absolutely. Yes. So the question is, can you work with other people's datasets? Yes, you can. As long as you also investigate and look for, is it possible, can I use it, am I allowed to use it? So, well, of course you have to check that anyway, so we need your check on that as well.
Are you allowed to do some new data collection to enrich your data set, to enrich an existing data set?
No, we don't want any new data collection from patients or whatever, because that takes a lot of money and a lot of time. So unfortunately this time not.
I'm a little bit confused about one of the previous answers, because, and also I'm not quite certain whether it's very specific in the call text, because one of the main criteria is that it has to have a considerable impact on AMR, and that there should be reuse of data, etc. But isn't there, even for implementation or gap analysis, there will be some room for an intervention study or collection of new data? Because otherwise, well, that's the question. Or is it simply only reuse of data? Because I'm a bit confused now, because is it only that, or can we do a small intervention or implementation study still?
Well, of course, if you do a reuse of data, you will get new data. That's the confusing thing about it. But what we will not fund in this particular call is getting more data from patients, for instance. We cannot. It's a too small amount of money in a too short period. We cannot do that. So in that case, it's like you have this data set. If you have a brilliant idea on how to connect it to other data or how to bring it a step further, it's about bringing things a step further, then you're welcome in this call.
Thank you. What I find a bit hard, I guess, is if I read the text in a call, then I think I can do a lot. Like we have a project, some method we want to do. We want to do implementation work and see what kind of factors are successful or failures. And if you want to monitor that, then you have to collect some kind of new data. You have to do a little survey or to see if the implementation was indeed successful, to take it a step further. I cannot match it with the message from this afternoon that you cannot collect new data. How?
Yeah, well, the thing is that what we do not want is lots of including patients' materials or because that is just too much for this call.
So suppose you think you have a successful method,
yes,
tested in an earlier project, and you want to take it one step further with a combination of some data that already exists. Actually, it's not possible then in this round. Is that a conclusion, or?
Yeah, it will be difficult.
Because if I read the text in a call about implementation projects, I think, oh great, we can combine some existing data and we can look at a method we think is successful to implement. But if I hear this, then I think, okay, I cannot go for this grant.
Then I think it's a different type of research. You just cannot do the classical intervention research in this call. You will need to get new knowledge out of existing data by reanalyzing those existing data.
So just the data. It's just the data.
Yeah, just so maybe maybe you can only get to the point of finding a new hypothesis of what can work. In this call, you can just not do a classical intervention study, which you may. I understand that you would like to do that, but it's a different type of project, different type of research.
But it's a bit in the text. Or did I misread something in the text?
No, it is. I think it is. It is a different way of looking at it. So we're used to designing a new intervention and designing a new study with RCT or stuff like that, and check with a new group of people whether it works or not. And the thing we ask now is look at existing data. And you do have a hypothesis. Well, look at the existing data. What kind of information can you get out of that? And you will not get a high level of proof, but you will at least get a new set of knowledge of based on the existing data. And that may be a starting point for a future project in another call. But this is only one step ahead, one step further to new ideas, new hypotheses.
Yeah, so I have a question. I want to use historical data, old data, in our invitation from 2014, including 2019, and compare that to data that is currently being generated. So for the pre-proposal, and for when the project is starting, the project will start in 2020, but is current data or old data still 2019 data? Do you know what I mean? So on December 31st we collect data of this year, but we can
reuse that for the 2020. Yeah, so we have half a years of data now, but it will be complete in 2019. But for the pre-proposal,
It's not existing yet.
it's not existing yet, but for the starting of the project, it is. No.
I don't think it should be a problem, because I honestly think that if you will get the data when you start, you have the data when you start, and well, I would expect if you get to the full proposal stage and if you get funded, and the data seems to be worthless, then you will inform me, and then we can discuss how to proceed. So thank you. We will also be monitoring this process. So it is a new way of looking at research and of funding. The way we have to involve, also this EU regulations. We also had to involve these, the reuse of data and the fairness and the unity of language. It's called different, I understand in English, but anyway, so we, so it's also new for us. So I would really like to work together to see how this works out also for the research field. What can we learn from it? What is not working? What will be working? We also really want to make an efficient, gain more return on investment on previous research. This is the gain of this research call now. So if you have any other questions, just come to us, call us, mail us. We will also be very, very happy to help you without writing or helping you write the call. It's not us who says, yes, this is fantastic or not. It's the committee who will do so in the first stage, and the reviewers. So the better the reviewers, the more the reviewers we have from you guys, the better this whole process works. So I guess this is what we wanted to share with you.